For the long haul here today. I do want to say that I do have serious concerns about what appears to be an incoherence in our regional strategy related to Iran specifically, where we're marching towards a nuclear agreement with them, yet we're supporting Saudi Arabia as they're striking their influence in the Houthis in Yemen, yet Qasem Soleimani is leading the ground offensive to take back Tikrit while we're providing the Air Force. No wonder why our Sunni partners don't want to, are concerned about the incoherence there. So I know a lot of that is you're participants, but you're not fully responsible for. But I just want to, say on the record that I think it's that incoherent strategy that's impacting some of the lack of commitment of our allies in the political nature, specifically in Iraq. But I want to focus my questions on specifically the targeting and the air campaign in Iraq. Just led a CODEL over to the region, met with the air component commander, met with the JTF leadership. They felt like ISIS was on the defensive, and then a couple weeks later, obviously, Ramadi fell. And I have been involved in the targeting process at the COCOM level down to the pilot. And so I am concerned, and I know you mentioned we were hitting all the targets we have, except for when collateral damage is a factor, General Dempsey. And I want to quote General Deptula's, who is the smartest guy on air power, I think, in our generation, op-ed in the Washington Post, and I'll do it quickly, a couple weeks ago. The fastest way to end the inhumanity of war is to eliminate its source, in this case, the Islamic State, as quickly as possible. Gradualism doomed the effectiveness of air power and Rolling Thunder air campaign in Vietnam. The current gradualist approach is worsening the suffering and increasing the loss of innocent life. While unintended casualties of war are regrettable, those associated with airstrikes pale in comparison with the savage acts being carried out by the Islamic State. What is the logic of a policy that restricts the use of air power to avoid the possibility of collateral damage while allowing the certainty of Islamic State crimes against humanity, is the question he poses. I think it's a very valid line of argument. If we're trying to avoid one civilian casualty, yet in not hitting a legitimate target, we're allowing the Islamic State to continue to commit atrocities and murder against the people on the ground. How do we balance that? So my question is, and you may need to answer this in a classified manner, what percentage of the strike sorties are coming back with their munitions on board, as just an indication of kind of our limitations? And how many targets have we actually identified? We've gone through the PID, we've got a valid target, but we actually haven't struck them, specifically because of the collateral damage limitations that are much tighter than the law of armed conflict requires, or because the approval process takes so long, we just are unable to hit it. So, what's that number? How many are we not hitting their legitimate targets because of this extreme constraint that we're putting on for collateral damage?
First, for the record, let me tell you, I couldn't disagree more with retired General Deptula. And I would say that both as General Dempsey, as Chairman Dempsey, and at some point in the future, Citizen Dempsey.
Okay.
Okay. Secondly, the targeting that we do is based on intelligence, and we fuse, as you know very well, we fuse UMINT, we fuse SIGINT, and we...
So I'm saying we got the PID. We got the PID, but now we don't strike because of the CDE.
Right. That's right. And that decision is made by the commander on the ground. And
so do we have a number, though, that, it's 80% or 20% don't get hit because of CDE, not because of PID?
I would like to answer you in a classified version, because I think we don't want to signal our enemies on how they might avoid being shot.
Well, it just gets to the indication of whether this is the thing that's really allowing us to not achieve our objectives.
In my judgment, this is not the limiting factor.
Okay, fair enough. The next question I want to follow up, we talked about it earlier. As you mentioned, we've got over 1,600 pilots flying every day, could have an engine issue, and then we've got a potential pilot being captured with the potential fate of the Jordanian pilot. As I was visiting the theater, visited some of our combat search and rescue forces there, but they remain outside Iraq primarily because of limitations of boots on the ground. And responsiveness is really important for combat search and rescue to be able to scoop them up right away. So we're allowing 450 more advisors to go in Iraq, but we're not allowing our combat search and rescue forces to go into Iraq. Have you advised the administration to move them there and they're not taking your advice, or are you comfortable with them being so far away with that increased responsiveness?
That's a great question. At this point, they are operating from locations outside of Iraq, and they can loiter, and we're not taking any more risk at that point. If we go into the point where we were going to accompany the Iraqi security forces, that will require not just, that's why it's important, you know this, but it's important to understand, this is not just about putting 3 JTACs forward. It's about putting a medevac capability and a combat search and rescue, a personal recovery capability, and a QRF. And so 15 people might require 150.
Right, but one F-16 pilot deep into Syria needs that same responsiveness.
Right, but we've got PR in hand right now. If we expand this at some point, we'll have to address it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good questions. Mr. Norquist.